Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Wilbur Talks FPL, where we talk everything FPL and, of course, the Premier League in general. We are back for another week. Apologies, missed a week with all the midweek fixtures. It's a very struggle to get a podcast in when there's midweek fixtures starting on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, but we are back. Full complement. Myself, Charlie, and Sam. How are you both doing?
All good here, thank you.
Yeah, good, thanks, mate.
Good stuff. So I think we'll jump straight into it because we've got a few game weeks to cover at least, but we will only focus more on the results that we've had on the weekend when we get to the actual talking about the matches. So I'll start with you, Charlie. We've had about 3 game weeks, I think, since we last podded. How was your most recent one? And just talking about probably the last 3 weeks in general, how have you been getting on and how's the rank looking at the minute?
So it's been up and down. The most recent, I think, like a lot of people, was quite low scoring. I think the average was only about 45, was it? Something like that, of which I got to 41. So that's the first time I'm under the average for the season. The last few weeks, basically my whole season's been green arrow, then red arrow, then green arrow, then red arrow, which is a little frustrating, but also I can't really complain because I'm in a decent place. So at the moment I am 121k overall, so that's pretty decent. Still just about clean on to top of the league, I think. Even after a rogue use of a bench boost, we might talk about that later. But yeah. So generally okay. I think things are roughly going to plan, but yeah, maybe it's difficult to be incredibly positive off the back of quite a disheartening week, but the case is that happened for everyone, really. There's few examples of a really good week. So yeah, overall not too bad.
I feel like I should butt in there and say I think I was the best of the 3, mainly carried by Ivan Toney's hat-trick, which is joyful to watch doing the Match of the Day challenge on Saturday. When I think Brentford was the first game, and I was like, oh my god, how was Brentford the first game? And I was like, oh, this could be decent points. So just touching on mine, I got 49, which, like I said, slightly above the average, but just carried by 17 points from Tony. So I think, I'm not sure how to gauge mine, because when I look at my ranks over the weeks, I'm getting green arrow, but that's because I just had I don't want to say I had a bad first week, but I was like 1.7 million, so since then I've been edging it slightly closer every week, so bit indifferent what I think, really. I've not captained Haaland for any of these, but I've owned him, so I think that's harmed me a bit as well at the same time. I was just going to touch on Charlie as well. Was there any significant, what kind of transfer moves have you made over those weeks that we might have potentially missed? Sort of players you've been tagged into getting, even if it was like a kind of 1 week punt. I think in one of the weeks you got in Perisic, didn't you? And someone else.
Yeah, exactly. It hasn't really worked out. But I was at a point where I had 2 free transfers, and it was feeling a bit like every week there wasn't a lot to do. So I just kind of felt like I want to just use these, have a stab at, or play a bit more aggressive than maybe I would normally. Particularly with the idea of that potential game week ahead of game week 9 wildcard to bail me out if I needed to. So like you say, I went with Perisic for James when we saw that James was going to be out for that 1 week. In hindsight, maybe it would have been a better idea just to hold James, bench him, and use just one of my 2 transfers. But like I said, I wanted to try and attack that. I did some digging into the stats, saw that on Perisic's side, I think it was a game against West Ham, I want to say. Perisic, on Perisic's side, that's where West Ham are weakest, and obviously it didn't really work out. And he may well be moving out this weekend. So yeah, we can put that down as a failed transfer. But like I said, I still was glad I kind of wanted just to try and play a bit more aggressive with. I am moving more and more towards this, definitely locking in for that wild card during the international break. So making a few moves with a bit more short term in mind.
That was a funny one because we didn't pod between those game weeks, and I'd literally recommended out a few hours before for someone to get rid of Perisic. So I would have said, before we don't avoid him, because I didn't fancy that West Ham game, and then he was benched again, wasn't he? So I could see what you're going for the short-term gains, and I think a lot of people had to move with that James news. Like that, in my situation, I didn't have Cancelo, so it was an easy move for me to Cancelo. It just speeded me getting Cancelo in there, and that perfectly worked out when he scored his goal. So I got a lucky break with that one. And I think my moves in between have been a pretty boring transfers. I think when we discussed on the last pod, I was talking about getting a new goalkeeper. It was between Ramsdale and Sanchez. Got Sanchez. And I think he did better than Ramsdale the first week, and then this week they both did pretty nothing. So up on Sanchez so far. And then the pure boring transfer this week of Neto to Gibbs White, which got me an assist. So not highly exciting transfers, but I was sick of losing value on Neto. He just had to go. So not much excitement for me. I think I'm about 600k now after this week. So on the way up, and we'll see how we get on. But yeah, Tony definitely pulled me through this week. How about you, Sam? How is your few game weeks been going, and the most recent one?
Yeah, most recent one wasn't great, to be fair. I decided to swap out Luis Diaz for Kulusevski. Again, just sort of what Charlie was saying, with trying to be a little bit more offensive on substitutions rather than reactive, trying to be a bit more proactive. But that didn't really work out because Kulusevski didn't start. So I got under average this week for the first time in a long time. Haaland carried me through with basically half of my points this week. Last week was really good. Last week got 81 against an average of 62. Again, flipped the captaincy from Haaland to Salah at the last minute, and Haaland went and banged a hat-trick, so that was pretty unfortunate. And then game week 4 as well was good. That was a 70-pointer. So this last week, I think generally the average score was pretty low in relation to the other 2 weeks. And I think that's just because a lot of teams are still very template. And we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks as to how that changes, or if it changes at all, really.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those weeks where you just don't want to panic too much because, like you said, the template is very strong. So on average, a lot of people got low points. And if you look at the team of the week from this week, it's like I don't think there might be one or two people you'd ever pick from that team. It's just one of those freak kind of weeks where literally every defender with a blank. I can't believe Liverpool got a clean sheet. I had Trent and Robbo, and then didn't get either of them with a clean sheet. That was just one of those things, isn't it? That just happens like probably once a season. So I think a lot of people have panicked and gone for the wild card, but it might not potentially be the best thing this week. It might be a better idea in a few weeks that I think Charlie mentioned, and we might touch on when we get to the second half of the pod, that a lot of wildcards will be coming in the next few weeks, so it's a good way to break away from the template, but we'll talk about that as we go through. So if we move on to the fixtures from this most recent week, we're not going to go back over the fixtures, obviously, that have happened in the previous few game weeks, and so I feel like we'll go back to Sam and start with the Merseyside derby. Well, I can't imagine you're too impressed with the results, Sam, but what did you make of the game and overall result performance in that game?
I think, to be fair, Klopp summed it up pretty well after the game and said if you can't win the derby, then don't lose it. And we certainly nearly lost it. I got helped out by VAR on a couple of occasions. I was surprised Van Dijk didn't see red for his challenge on, I think it was Onana. And then Cody's goal, questionable offside there. I think for me personally, if that was going against us, I would be livid if that got ruled out. So I think Everton have a right to feel aggrieved about that. Just to say before in terms of off footballing matters, I think it's disgraceful what the Everton fans did to the murals up around Anfield. A lot of the work that the food banks are doing up in Liverpool is incredible, and the defacing of those murals is just disgusting. I know it doesn't represent the entire Everton fan base, but it just shows how far we've still got to go in terms of cultural empathy in football. We've definitely come a long way, but it's embarrassing to still see these kind of things happening. Overall, fiery derby, as you would expect. Liverpool pretty unfortunate not to score at a moment where Núñez hit the bar and then Luis Diaz hit the post. So it could have been a close game. I don't really think either team did enough to win the game, in all honesty, so a draw is probably a fair result. Not a great result for us, considering how bad Everton have been this year. And probably a great result for Everton, considering how bad they've been this year. But some game weeks coming up that hopefully they can turn it around. But something's not quite right with Liverpool at the moment. Lost the mojo a little bit. I know they stuffed Bournemouth 9-0, but Bournemouth were in a bad way. So I wouldn't read too much into that as the general tone of how quick the season's going to turn around. It was a big turnaround against Newcastle. To get that last-minute winner was good. But, got to be beating Everton if you've got ambitions of of getting anywhere near the title, which already seems to be in a questionable position. So not the greatest start for us. I'm hopeful we can turn it around.
Yeah, you've got quite a difficult run coming up over the next 5 or 6 games as well, haven't you? So you really need to up that form. I saw that Thiago's back in training, isn't he? Do you think that's going to
Thiago's back,
it?
but Carvalho's out and Curtis Jones out. And then we've got Ox and Naby Keita, who weren't included in the Champions League squad. So that gives you an indication as to how long-term they perceive those injuries to be. So it's not great at the moment. The situation's not the best that it could be. I'm interested to see what happens with Arthur. Came in from Juventus on loan on deadline day, so that'll be an interesting one. But there's just something that's not quite right. Quite a lot of people have said that it's the fact that Mane's not there. I don't necessarily think that's the case because Luis Diaz has been given an opportunity and taken it again. But they just look so out of ideas in midfield. It's a bit concerning, but yeah, hopefully Thiago can come back and stay fit. I think the longest amount of games he's managed in a row for us has been 10, and with games every two games a week minimum now till the World Cup, it's going to be critical they try and manage his minutes to keep him fit, because otherwise it's going to be another tough position if we lose another one or two.
Yeah, I think you're definitely struggling at midfield. Obviously, when we talked about United against Liverpool before, it just didn't look right in midfield. Like, even United haven't got a great midfield but could overpower them, so those injuries definitely aren't helping you. It's just, yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? I get what you're saying about Mane. I think I always thought Mane would have it'll be interesting to see the impact of that, and I think we are seeing that slightly, and I think it's adjusting more to like Nunes and a different style of players in it, but I feel like you'll click eventually, won't you? It's a strange patch at the minute, but you could beat anyone on your day.
It just feels like they're just waiting for it to click rather than proactively trying to push the click and work out how they're going to do it. And the longer they sit and wait, with respect to the other teams around us last year, were pathetic, in all honesty. Like, apart from Man City and Chelsea for the first half of the season, Arsenal, Man United, Spurs, there was no competition. This year there is competition, and it's like you take your foot off the gas at the wrong point. So I think it's going to be much closer than I anticipated. I know at the start of the year I tipped us to win the league, and I thought it was going to be very close, but it's going to take a miraculous turnaround and a hell of a run for us to go on and do that.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. It might even be that you're in a fight for the 4th positions compared to title, but might turn around. But we'll move on to the next game. Just doing this in order here, Charlie, coming back to you. I'm not just trying to brag about Ivan Toney's hat-trick, so I'm naturally going to go in order. Let me know what you think of the Brentford game, and I was going to link that in with a question in terms of FPL, that there's a lot of discussion around kind of going to a 3 striker formation now in FPL, because you've got like Tony, Isak at Newcastle just come in, Mitrovic has been doing very well. A follow-up question after we talk about Brentford is, when you go into your wildcard, as you kind of hinted towards already, would you be eyeing up those 3 strikers, and is there a certain striker you'd be eyeing up? It could be Tony, it could be someone else, as I've just mentioned.
Yeah, where to start with those? So, obviously, Tony's the big talking point for us, at least from an FPL perspective, from that Brentford game. Kind of maybe hints of that lead side flashing back to under Bielsa, and just kind of being able to be kind of broken down and beat him. Obviously, you've got to say all 3 of those goals really from Tony were pretty spectacular. The free kick, and he's. I think there were questions at the start of the season, certainly myself, and I think others as well, of how it would work with no Eriksen in the side, because Eriksen certainly seemed to lift them and add that creativity they needed in the second half of last season, but clearly he's gone on a bit of a run. And I think it does mean, and the general kind of way everyone's moving in FPL is moving to the 3 strikers. I probably have a plan to do that myself anyway, even before the wildcard. The way I'm looking at it at the moment, I'm going to get one of, and I'm still undecided, but one of Mitrovic or probably Isak, just because I don't really want Tony again, even though he may well score against Arsenal. I don't want him in against Arsenal in game week 8. Whereas if we look at Mitro or Isak, but I still want to see a bit more from Isak, see what he does. But Mitrovic has Forest in game week 8, and Isak has Bournemouth. So both look like pretty good 1 week punts for me, with the night in wildcard in mind. So yeah, my plan will be to move to a 3-striker formation anyway, and then planning the wildcard with 3 strikers. Definitely, I think that's it makes sense to go to that now. I think with the way we've seen, particularly for the value of those players compared to equivalent kind of midfielders, we're seeing those 8 million midfielders not really hitting what we wanted to.
I'm definitely not ahead in the ranks, but I think how my team was structured before, I mentioned about the 8 million midfielders not being a big draw, and I never went with one, which allowed me to get a first striker quite early. So I'm not saying I'm ahead of the trend here, because I'm definitely not in terms of rank, but I'm quite happy with my 3-striker setup going forward. And like we've said, I think a lot of people will be wildcarding towards that kind of 3-striker setup. So I'm quite happy to have the structure in place that I've got at the minute. Talking about strikers, Haaland has also the score for Man City in the Champions League. So whatever competition is in your score, it looks like at this point. I mean, so much about being rested is playing every game so far. Well, not quite every minute, but yeah, it's an interesting one. I think everyone's going to be going for those strikers. I quite like the look of it. Isak as well. I know he had a one-on-one at the weekend that he didn't put away. He tried to go for his kind of cheeky chip that I've heard he likes to do, and it didn't really go particularly well. So yeah, he's definitely one to watch out for, and I'm a bit wary on him in terms of Callum Wilson coming back, what happens when he comes back. So definitely one to look out for, and we need to be thinking about it if we're bringing him in on wildcard.
I think the other thing with Mitrovic and Tony as well is something which I quite like in an FPL player, is if they're the kind of talisman of their team.
Yeah.
Because but Tony for Brentford and Mitrovic for Fulham, if those teams score, you would expect them to play some part, whether it's scoring or assisting. So, and at the moment they look like they can score in most games. So yeah, they, especially when both of those teams have a pretty good run. It seems like no-brainers at this point.
Yeah, I think definitely Mitrovic. He just, like, as soon as a goal comes up, we just expect it to be Mitrovic. Has anyone actually scored for Fulham apart from him? I feel like there might have been 1 or 2 goals, but he must have about 80% of the goals have scored, if not more, this season. It's ridiculous. Yeah, Tony, I feel, he's definitely a talisman, but you can get a few other returns. Well, when they scored 5, he could have been included in those other last 2 as well. That would have helped me slightly more, but won't complain. But yeah, I think someone was saying he's never really taken free kicks previously, Tony, and then he just goes and bangs that one in, and then he had another one where he took and hit the bar, so it was just obscene. But I'm not complaining. Long may it continue. He's in my FPL team. That's what we'll say. He put out a nice little tweet as well about FPL players taking about his team just before he scored a hat-trick, so I thought that was quite funny. So if we move back to the fixtures and go back to you, Sam, we talked about you might be having a fight for a 4th position if Liverpool keep up the form. Chelsea have just lost in the Champions League. What do you make of Chelsea so far this season? Would you say they're kind of similar to yourself and not kind of clicking so far?
It's a funny one, isn't it, really? Because I mean, I have not enjoyed watching Chelsea play football this season. Like, I just haven't at all. And there's not really been a focal point to them. They've spent a lot of money. It just seems a little bit. They've got a little bit of lack of identity at the moment because they've got a lot of individual new players that are coming in and trying to settle in. They need time to gel. So Chelsea appear to be in a little bit of a rebuild. But having said that, if a club's in a rebuild, they're still there or thereabouts. So I still think Chelsea will be in the top 4 at the end of the season. I think they've got too much quality in individual players not to be there. But they are conceding a lot of goals. Like, maybe not in terms of sheer volume, but they're not keeping many clean sheets at all. So I think that will be a concern for them. A good win though against West Ham, but as we all know, VAR had an absolute disaster at the weekend, and West Ham should have got a point out of this game. So good win for Chelsea, but they can only take you can only play what's in front of you, and you can only play the rules that are held against you in that game. So I think it was an absolute mess, that VAR decision to disallow the equalising goal. But, that's probably been widely talked about so far, and I don't really think there's too much to say. West Ham feel rightly aggrieved. David Moyes was livid after the game, understandably so. Chelsea don't fill me with a lot of confidence, but I just think they're probably a bit better in terms of individual quality than some of the teams around them. Like they've definitely got more strength in depth than Spurs, and I'm a big fan of what Arsenal are doing so far this season. But I think man for man throughout the squad, Chelsea have probably got a slightly higher talent rating than Arsenal have. So I fully expect Chelsea to be in the top four at the end of the season, even though they haven't made the most exceptional start.
Yeah, my dad supports West Ham, and I was trying to do match a day challenge on Saturday, and the only inkling I got was when he called me and said, "Have you just seen West Ham being robbed in the game?" I was like, "Don't talk to me about it. I'm trying, don't ruin it." But that kind of gave me a good indication of how it had gone, and yeah, that decision was just crazy play acting as well by Mendy, really, to get the foul. But yeah, it's ridiculous. Been some atrocious decisions that we might talk about in other games as well. Well, we've kind of touched on Newcastle as well. Not a great decision in there either, which just makes the referees and VAR in general look very daft, doesn't it? But like you've said, everyone's talked about that, and they just need to make some changes. I saw tonight in the Champions League to try to trial this kind of, I don't know if it's like virtual offside, where they can give an offside decision a lot quicker. So I don't know if they're going to try and implement that in the Premier League at some point, but I think they're trialing it in the Champions League, so that'd be interesting to see. But yeah, Chelsea are a funny one. I think they've got a click as well, and I think was it Dynamo Zagreb? I think one of Charlie's favourite, Orsic scored in that to down another London team. So yeah, I'm not convinced by Chelsea, but again, they've got a click at some stage, I think. But I'm still concerned about where the goals are going to come from, as I've mentioned since the start of the season. I know they've got Aubameyang, but I'm sure Charlie can talk about how toxic he can be, but he can finish on his day. But yeah, there's something not right there either, and I think they need to click at some stage. But we'll see how they get on. Another team that's in that kind of race for top four, Charlie, back to your North London rivals in terms of Spurs. I feel like Spurs kind of just smoothly going along, unbeaten, and no one's really taken a lot of notice of them. Are you concerned they could finish above you again from what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I think that's been the case all season, and going into, from pre-season as well. I think they've clearly got in Conte a complete winner, and yeah, that front three, particularly Kane and Son, and Kulusevski's obviously added a lot. Is one of the best in the league. There's no question about that. I think they just lack maybe the in the rest of the team to kind of push them to that next level. So yeah, I mean, yeah, like you say, probably the fact that maybe because they've drawn 2 games, or maybe it's also because of Arsenal before the weekend going unbeaten, winning all the games, not just unbeaten. Maybe they have kind of not been focused on as much, but yeah, I think yeah, the definite. It was always going to be the case. They were going to be direct rivals for top 4. And yeah, I feel like at the moment, if we were going to go into, so we've got the North London derby after the international break, I would only feel more confident at home. Away, I think they would win. At home, I think we have a chance to win. So I think it's very much in the balance between the two sides, and who turns up on the day, really. So yeah, all good things going for them, I think. And yeah, good. But I think Son impressed more from what I saw, at least. And maybe we'll get into this a bit later, but I do have an interesting move lined up potentially to look at him for the Leicester game in game week 8. Again, talking about this taking a 1-week punt, it may well be him, Son coming in for me in that one game, because we know how bad Leicester have been. But yeah, also from that game, nice to see Mitrovic grab his token goal as well.
Finish mind as well. He's just like in the form of his life at the minute. Obviously, he's great in the Championship, but we've not really seen it in the Prem before, so it's nice to see, I guess. And a good team to watch, to be fair, Fulham. At least they give it a go in a lot of the games. So there'll be I feel like they're a team to target, but then don't always guarantee that you're going to get a clean sheet at the same time. So because Mitrovic can always turn up with one of those goals. I want to go back a fixture, back to you, Sam. Probably not a glamour tie, but ended up being a decent game in the end with two promoted sides, Forest against Bournemouth. I don't know if you've got Nico Williams in personally in your team, but I know a lot of people do have Nico Williams in the FPL team, and we're hoping probably for a clean sheet in this one. I personally think this is probably one of Forest's best chances at home to get a win. So they might regret that later down the line. But what did you make of Forest and Bournemouth in that game, Sam? And does that change your thinking of how they can do this season in terms of survival, or no change?
No, I think that game was the perfect showing as to why both of those teams will go down. Forest, first half, Forest played Bournemouth off the park. Bournemouth weren't in the game at all. Forest scored 2 good goals. The intensity was high. They're at home. They're 2-0 up. The crowd's behind them. Bournemouth have just been thumped 9-0. And now they're coming into second half 2-0 down away from home. And somehow Nottingham Forest lose the game. The show of defending was atrocious. There's no way you can lose that from 2-0 up against one of your relegation rivals. Having spent the money they have in the summer, you just can't lose those positions against your direct rivals and expect to stay in the league. Credit to Bournemouth, but again, Bournemouth were outplayed in the first half, and against any other team in the league with a little bit of game management about them, they would have had no chance of coming back to a 3-2 win. So fair play to Bournemouth on the day, but I do have Nico Williams. I was hoping that at 2-0 at half-time with an assist and a clean sheet on the cards, I was feeling pretty confident. I put him into the 11 for this week, so that was a good first half. But yeah, I mean, not much to say about the game in general because I'm pretty confident both of those teams are going down.
Yeah, I decided to get in the second Forest player. I'm not probably a strange move now, but I did get Gibbs White and Nico Williams both with an assist. So considering the lost 3-2, both of them getting an assist is a fairly decent result, I guess. And I think Forest, the next 2 fixtures, have got Leeds and Fulham as well. So really need to be getting stuff from there if they're going to prove themselves in the league. Cause, like I said, it's important to get the points against those teams around you because that's going to make the difference when you get to the final knockings of the season. I don't think I'm particularly going to mention about City game on here unless, Charlie, for example, you want to mention anything on the City game. It's kind of what we'd expect really from Haaland in terms of that. And of course, every time Leon Bailey's on my bench, he also likes to get a return. I think he's got 2 returns this season. I've had him the whole season, and both returns have been when he's been on my bench. But is there anything you wanted to add on City, Charlie, in terms of that performance from them?
No, I think you covered it there. Just, I guess, from an FPL perspective, Haaland does just now look pretty inevitable every game.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary at the moment for the league based on what he's doing. It just seems like we talk about Mitrovic, but obviously to a much higher level. It just feels like he's going to get at least a goal every game, if not much more. So, yeah, good for City, I guess.
Yeah, not the rest of the league. Yeah, I feel like they've got that better attacking presence, but they need a bit more control at the back because they do seem vulnerable and they're not seeing all the clean sheets so far. I know the XG conceded hasn't been ridiculously high against them, but still giving away decent chances. And you could argue that Coutinho offside, which wasn't offside, if they'd played on, that could have even lost them the game. But that's another one of those VAR ones that I think that's slightly different because of the whistle being blown, but you never know what could have happened there. And maybe one of these days Leon Bailey will get some points while he's in my starting lineup. Thing is, now he's gone down to 4.7 million. I don't think he's going anywhere because they can't really downgrade and get much money out of him. And because he scored that goal, I'm hoping he might go back up in price. So one of those ones that I'm going to have to stick with. And I think he's had City and Arsenal, hasn't he, the last 2 games. Now he's got past those fixtures. His fixtures aren't actually too bad, so he might make a rare appearance in my actual starting 11, but we'll see. Seeing as I only briefly mentioned that game, Charlie, we'll stay with you and we'll let you talk about your favourite game from the Sunday.
Brighton.
No, unfortunately not Brighton. Man United against Arsenal. What did you make of the game from both teams' point of view, and obviously you'll be disappointed with the result?
Yeah, I was apprehensive going into the game, to be honest. We've not got a good record, especially away against your lot. and obviously in the last couple of weeks you've been picking up a little bit of form. It's maybe not been perfect by any means, but it's obviously a big turnaround from how things started. So yeah, I kind of went into the game feeling like a draw would have been good. I would have definitely taken a draw before the game. And I think for the first however long, Arsenal did play well, which is probably the positive to take from the game, is that up until probably the point, I think, when it would have been United's second goal, I think, Arsenal were playing well, and then at that point Arteta decided to just go all out. I think Gary Neville mentioned it on commentary, just kind of threw on lots of attacking players and went all for it, which kind of just played right into Man United's hands. So I'm kind of discounting the rest of the game in terms of how things progress going forward, because that was, I think, probably something which Arteta will learn from as well. That was a bit too much all at the same time. But yeah, like I say, I think it was still a good enough performance to show that Arsenal have the credentials to go top four. I know there are some, I wouldn't even call them proper fans, people on Twitter and stuff talking about, supposedly Arsenal fans talking about Arsenal for the title. I still, even at however many games it was, 5 games, 5 wins, that doesn't really matter in my mind. It was getting off to a good start ahead of the likes of our top 4 rivals like Spurs, Chelsea, etc., rather than ever thinking we're competing with the likes of Man City or Liverpool, really. So yeah, I think no big takeaways really from this game, or it doesn't particularly change my opinion of Arsenal at this point. I think it's still a young, quite inexperienced side that are showing promising progression so far. So yeah, in my mind, really, it was all about getting a good performance, which I think in large parts they did, and taking that into the next game and not letting this affect the next game.
Yeah, I'm not used to saying this, but I said it against Liverpool as well. I feel like we were better in midfield than Arsenal, and that's what made the difference. I think it was Eriksen kind of pulling the strings, that was kind of playing those kind of passes, those killer passes, which I think made a difference because he was involved in every single goal, and it was just because you had a lot of possession, and that kind of played into our hands at the same time. Kind of what you said, you had a control of most of the game. I think the first 10-15 minutes we was probably on top, and then all the way from that point, I think it was around when Martinelli had that goal disallowed, like from that point till about the hour mark, he was on top, except for obviously Anthony's goal. But yeah, I just feel like we just had a bit more quality in midfield when we actually had the ball. Obviously, had the ball a lot more than us, and we made it count a bit more than you guys did. And I just, like you mentioned, you've got a young team. I feel like you're just missing that kind of 1 or 2 more experienced bodies. If you had like 2 more experienced bodies in, especially, I feel like in midfield, I don't know. I've not watched Arsenal every game. I don't know how much difference Partey makes. Obviously, he wasn't playing. But I feel like that midfield, like Partey, and then maybe someone, I don't think Xhaka's really, say if you want to get higher up in the league eventually, Xhaka's probably not the one. I feel like you need maybe an extra midfielder in there to kind of add a bit of experience and kind of leadership in there. Like for me, you might completely disagree because obviously it's your club, Charlie. Odegaard isn't the kind of player I'd want as a captain for my team. Probably different from your point of view, but he's not kind of that driving force that I would want in my team to kind of, like we talk about a Vieira or a Roy Keane from previous kind of Arsenal against Man United kind of games. But that's the fact that what I thought from that game is the midfield was kind of where we had the better quality than you and just made the right pass at the right time. But I don't disagree, you still played well, and we just got you at the right moments on the counter attack, and that third one it just was too easy because you just didn't know what you was doing with your shape. So I don't know what you think on any of those comments.
Yeah, I think on the captain point, I do disagree. I think it's been talked about because from the certainly from the outside, it does. I can understand the viewpoint that he doesn't seem like your kind of typical, like you're saying, the kind of Roy Keane, Vieira, hard man captain, like complete passion and everything like that. But all the talk inside the club is he is the perfect captain, and I think at this point we've got no reasons to doubt. Particularly Arteta and all the setup inside the team to make those decisions now. I think they've shown that ultimately they're making more right decisions than wrong ones, which is all you can ask for. I also think I am having a shift on Xhaka, to be fair. I think he has completely changed his role, and he's so much better suited in his current role. And everything I think about in the Arsenal team is I compare to the City team, because that's obviously how we're modelling ourselves. And if you think of Xhaka more in the Gundogan role than any kind of more defensive midfielder, that's maybe a better way to judge him against. And he has been doing that, and you've seen the results of that this season, where he's been getting more into the box, he's been scoring goals, and he's been kind of drifting inside and forward, whereas Zinchenko's then covering him in midfield. So, but I certainly don't disagree that we need maybe some extra players in there. With the club were looking for an extra midfielder, but just weren't able to sort it or get the right person in. And certainly you mentioned Thomas Partey. That was a huge thing. That's basically what's shown in our defence. So I'm someone with Ramsdale in my FPL team. Literally since Partey's been out, that's when the clean sheets stopped coming. So, and that was the same last season as well. When Partey got injured, then our defence fell apart. So, he is pretty vital, particularly to our defensive play. Having him screening that back for. But yeah, like I say, overall still fairly positive, and it sounds like Partey's coming back soon as well, which is good.
Yeah, I feel like definitely the first goal was where you kind of needed the Partey, because I think Ødegaard and I'm pretty sure Ødegaard and Xhaka were pressed up trying to press, and then we beat the press, and then we beat the last midfielder, and Gabriel had to step out, absolutely snapped Bruno in half. He still didn't get a booking for that. I'm still not quite sure. I think the referee was off celebrating the goal afterwards and forgot to book him. And you were just exposed as soon as we got the ball after that. So, I just think, I'm not used to saying this, outclassing teams in midfield. But I think that's where we really won it, and obviously the counter-attacking play. But like I said, I think we've found a way to just win games now, which we couldn't do before. So at the minute we're just winning games however we can, and that's a great skill to have. Obviously we might get to a point where we're playing a bit better football, fast-flowing football, but we're getting the job done, which we kind of needed to do after those first two games. And in the first two games you can see what goes on, but I'm not getting carried away. And like you said, Charlie, as Arsenal fans, they're just, some of them on Twitter are just absolutely fantastic. I've seen some fantastic clips over the last few weeks, and some of them have been shot down this week. So not putting any jabs at you, Charlie, but some of them needed a sit down on Twitter. I think they were getting a bit excited, weren't they? But
yeah, I think that's the case for a lot of football fans on Twitter, to be fair, regardless of what club.
Yeah, especially when, like, you could say the same for United and Arsenal, that way you've had a good 10 years, even you talk about Arsenal, where you've had limited success, and then any kind of hint of getting back to those old ways that just get very giddy, and we won't talk too much about them. It's quite funny to watch, depending on which way it goes. But we'll swiftly move on, and I'm sure you'll still do well the rest of the season, just a blip. But I think you're coming into a harder run, aren't you? So it's going to be interesting to see how your form continues through when you've got a few harder fixtures.
Can I just jump in there just on that? Just a couple of thoughts in on that fixture. Mm-hmm. I think I agree with a majority of the points that both of you are making. I like Ødegaard as a captain option for Arsenal. I think he evidently does things the right way and sets the tone, and is obviously a good role model to the rest of the team. And I think that's probably what you're looking for in a captain, rather than necessarily having to be a Vieira or a Yakin or stuff like that. I just, overall, Arsenal were a bit naive. I think we can all agree on that. In that triple substitution was probably not what they needed at that point in the game. It just felt like they were still well in the game. They didn't really need to be doing that, but that is kind of what happened at the end of the day. And United finished all three of their goals really well. But I think Arsenal's model is just so much more sustainable at the minute than Man United's model. And we'll talk about the quality that they have in midfield and the quality that United have in midfield. I think you'd probably expect Man United to have more quality in midfield with the amount of money that they've thrown at that team to try and get it to the stage that they are. And you are right, Will, very valid point in saying that winning games when you're not playing well is a good trait, and that is certainly a good trait. But from what I've seen so far this season, I still think Arsenal are going to finish above Manchester United in the league. That hasn't changed my my perception, not just because Arsenal are top of the league, but because I believe that Arsenal are going to approach their games and their competitions in a more sustainable manner than United are so far. United have done well to turn around from losing 4-0 at Brentford in the manner they did, and they just got absolutely battered, to beating Liverpool and then beating Arsenal. And then I think it was Southampton as well that you got a 1-0 result against, I think. So yeah, overall, like, Man United have done well to get 9 points out of 9 and are going well. But I just think the sustainable model of Arsenal, of what they've created so far, is actually a little bit worrying for the next few years of the Premier League. I mean, I know Man City are going to be hard to stop every single year that Guardiola's there, and now Haaland just looks like a freak god. But I really do expect Arsenal to be challenging. I actually think Arsenal will be challenging for the league quicker than Man United will be challenging for the league. That's my closing argument on that, I think.
Glad you're here, Sam. Thanks for that.
I've been very critical of Arsenal in the last few years. I think they've got some things horrendously wrong, but what they're trying to do at the moment just feels like it's got a little bit more of a plan about it than necessarily what United are trying to do, in terms of bring in a manager, throw £500 million at the team and hope it wins, and then, let's see what happens. But it just seems a little bit more structured with what's going on at Arsenal at the minute. But not taking anything away from Man United, it was a good result at the weekend.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I fully expect Arsenal to still finish above us. And I agree that they've got a better setup, and I'm hoping that have some faith in Ten Hag, and that's what they're going to build towards, being more focused on the system rather than putting all these players or money towards players and just working for the manager and around his system. But I expect that to take time. So, like, we've obviously, we've lost. Don't forget the whipping boys of Leicester that we beat in that run as well. So we've won 4 out of 4.
Sure.
But I'm not expecting that to continue. But I do think the thing with United, we've even seen it in like the Solskjaer kind of years. We can go on those runs where we could win like 10 in a row. So if we get momentum, I think we could beat anyone on a day, even City to that extreme. But I don't think we'll do it consistently enough to even challenge for the top 4. We're kind of one of those teams you don't want to play, especially at Old Trafford. But consistently, I don't think we'll keep up there. And I'm hoping, give it a year or two, they'll be a bit more consistent, and if they keep Ten Hag, that will come with time. But yeah, Arsenal above us in terms of progress to where they want to be. I think my point on Ødegaard is I can't see Arsenal winning the Premier League with Ødegaard as captain. That was kind of my thing. But
I could, for sure.
But we'll see how it goes in years to come. It's difficult to see
also
them anyway.
point out-
I don't think Ødegaard being the captain is the deciding factor as to whether Arsenal will win competitions or not. I think you could make a similar argument for Bruno at the moment. Like, Bruno is not exactly a Vieira. So I think Bruno spends more time on the floor than he does standing up. So
I'm complaining.
A lot of teams now, and a lot of the well-balanced managerial structures, and I would include Manchester United in that now that they've got Ten Hag in and they've got an apparent more balanced structural setup, are picking captains that set the tone right on the pitch, right off the pitch, and just lead by example in everything they do. They don't have to be the guy who's your Gerrard, Vieira, Lampard, Keane, who's just running around snapping everyone in half and banging it in from 30 yards. Jordan Henderson isn't even, probably not even in the top 11 most technically gifted players at Liverpool, and he's, in my opinion, one of, if not the best captain in the Premier League for what he does for the club and everything on and off the pitch. Sorry, so I don't think Ødegaard being captain really changes whether or not Arsenal can push for the title.
Yeah, I agree. Just to add to it as well, I remember even when Ødegaard came in on loan to us, he was the one that was always leading the press and organising the press whenever we were, obviously in transitional periods and stuff. So there were just key things you can see on the pitch, and from leading by example type things that he shows. That's why he's captain. I think he's Norway captain as well. So there's clearly something about him that has captain material both on the pitch and off the pitch, like Sam said.
There's a really prominent quote about leadership that's like, leadership is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of people in your charge. And I think that is exactly why Liverpool and Manchester City have been so far clear of everyone for so long, because the naivety of thinking, oh, we'll give the armband to Aubameyang. That was a howler, an absolute howler of a decision, because he's not going to take care of anyone other than himself. But if you have that selfless nature of your captain who's willing to sort of go out there and put himself about, i.e. Henderson. Like, I'm not saying for a minute he's the most technically gifted player at Liverpool, but you need a player like that who's willing to, when things are going rough, he's going to dig deeper and sacrifice himself for the benefit of the team. I don't even think Bruno's that guy. I think Maguire is probably a better captain than Bruno is, but technically Bruno is infinitely more gifted than Maguire is, and therefore you've got to give the armband to someone on the pitch. That's the way I read the situation, for sure. For me, if I was Manchester United manager, I'd probably be giving the armband to De Gea, to be honest. But who do we know? I'm not the Manchester United manager. I'm on an FPL podcast, so.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I can't really say anything when our club captain's sat on the bench anyway, so it's not a good example of our club either. But...
No, I do agree. Yeah. I don't think Odegaard's the problem, basically.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a problem. It's just, I don't know, something about it for me. But I get your points. If we just, well, you kind of briefly said it, Charlie. Do we want to touch on Brighton? I know you've got Pascal Gross on it, so that's in your team. So that's why I thought I'd stay with you for Brighton. I think he only got 1 assist into which out of 5 goals, avoiding it slightly for you.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a strange one, because I refuse. Oh, I don't refuse, but when a player is in a team is getting goals through directly from penalties, like McAllister, it was before I got Gross and still continues to do so. You feel like it shouldn't just carry on going, but he has and outscored pretty much every week. Obviously scored an open play one as well. And I think the positions Gross is taking up are enough that I'm happy with. I mean, he's a cheap midfielder anyway. It's not like I'm putting lots of money into him. And I think they are becoming these kind of value options now because they're performing so well. They're living up to some of the stats that they've been sort of putting in over the last few years and season under Graham Potter. So anyone in their kind of midfield, like the Trossard, Gross, even McAllister, because of his price, I think are all FPL options now. I know a few people have gone into the defence. Obviously, Sanchez is a big pick in goal. The new left back, Estupiñán, again, other people have picked. I think he was benched in this game and came off the bench, which is interesting to see because I think Potter has a bit of a history of just kind of rotating the team, maybe when it's not expected. And also it's been because Trossard seems to perform so well from that left wing back slot, which I don't think anyone necessarily saw him going into that position, that he can cover for him. But yeah, I think just overall it's definitely one to keep an eye out on and where you can get some decent value going forward in that team, because they should be certainly a lot better than any of the teams kind of around them, and not necessarily based on the names on the team sheet, but just in the way they're clicking as a team is perfect, and the kind of example that that is probably being set for other teams at their kind of level and around them, that just like we kind of talked about the Arsenal model as well. Similar thing with Brighton in terms of the likes that they prepared for the Cucurella leaving, they prepared for Basuma leaving, they prepared for White leaving. So the way they've kind of brought in these players, sold them for profit, and managed the next step as well. Seems to be a very well run club off the pitch, and they're performing very well on it with an excellent manager as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think McAllister should have had another goal as well, shouldn't he? There was a strange VAR decision in that game as well, where I think, was it Welbeck who was allegedly offside or something in the build-up, and then he scored a screamer from the edge of the box, so could have even had another goal there. Yeah, and the left-back, like you mentioned, I think he'll probably get some more game time as we get on, but I think it was a short turnaround, wasn't it, between the fixtures, and he'd only just come into the team, so... definitely one to look out for, because I think he's only 4.5, isn't he? And I saw quite a few people get him in. So it's an interesting one, because they generally do quite well, depending on if the player 4-back or a 5-back, depending on how flexible they are with formation. But yeah, definitely on a good run. And I think Everton got Bournemouth next as well. So you're definitely not transferring him out for Bournemouth for sure. But yeah, it's not a bad little pick, is it? It's like you said, all the options are so cheap in that team, you may as well have one of them in there. You don't want to be changing really to McAllister from Gross. So that decent little option you've got there. So I think that rounds up looking at all the fixtures. So I think it's a nice little quiz time again. It's your favourite type of quiz, the same that we had last time. I do quite like this one. You guys probably just absolutely hate it, but I'm just like, I just roll with it. So last time, Sam, you won, so I'm going to let Charlie go first. So we're playing exactly the same game as last time, so I'm going to give you... You've got to basically guess the player. Can you remember the rules from last time, guys? Do you need me to explain them?
No, you're fine.
Yeah, that's good then. Right, so your first player, Charlie. So we're in this, we're doing the previous 3 game weeks. So we're going to be talking about game week 4, 5, and 6, just to make it easier. So in game week 4, this player scored 3 points. In game week 5, this player scored 6 points. In game week 6, this player scored 18 points.
18. Well, This is in a roundabout way. I'm quite lucky with this one because I know exactly who this is. Not that I have him, but now let's get this right. My brother's wife's brother's son has been asking me for fantasy advice. Yes, has been asking me for fantasy advice, and he has this guy in his team. It is Marcus Rashford. I don't know anyone else that scored 18 points this week.
Yeah, I have to stick him in there. I really don't know while I've got a chance. Just a nice little dig in there. I know there was a few 17 pointers, I think, mainly from Tony, I remember. But yeah, I think he's the only one who got 18 points. So yeah, you are correct. Just had to put that one in there. Yeah, that's some kind of weird relation there, just managing to get to the answer. So we go to you, Sam. This player in... just lost my screenshot there. This player in game week 4 got 2 points. In game week 5, they got 10 points. And in game week 6, they got 14 points.
It must be the return of the Mac. Go for McAllister.
That is correct. We just talked about him, so that might have ruined that one slightly. Just easing you in, guys. Yeah, just easing you in, you see.
Yeah, no, that's...
Right.
I'm flipping a coin between Gross and McAllister for the transfer in this week, so fresh on the mind.
So back to you, Charlie. This player in game week 4 scored 5 points. Game week 5 scored 5 points again. And in game week 6 scored 7 points.
Okay, that's a bit more interesting. 557. So let's go back to working out the what the points totals would mean. So that's assist, goal for a midfielder. That's not going to be a defender. That's 2 weird numbers. If it was a forward, there'd have to be some bonus in there. Okay, I think it's a midfielder. 557. Who's delivered 3 out of 3? I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm gonna have to take a wild stab in the dark. I don't even know. Let's just go with, because I think he's done all right recently. Wisser from Brentford, maybe.
That is incorrect.
Okay, I know he scored this week.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. I can't remember if that was the one where you could have squared it to Tony. I was like, square the ball. So this player in game week 4 was playing Fulham. Game week 5 was playing Villa, and in game week 6 was playing Man United.
Oh, it's so then it's going to be Saka because he scored against United.
Yep, that is correct.
Yeah.
Just milking that fixture while I can. No. Right. Back to you, Sam. So your player in game week 4 scored 7 points. Game week 5 scored 9 points. And in game week 6 scored 5 points.
7, 9, and 5, yeah?
That is correct.
Hmm. 7, 9, and 5. I mean, I don't know any players that scored 5 points this week. But 795 strikes me as probably more likely to be a striker with like a bonus, 3 bonus, a goal, maybe a goal and a yellow card. I don't know anyone who's scored 3 weeks in a row though, apart from Haaland, and it's not him.
Yeah, I did consider putting him in, but he was like 17-17, and then whatever he got this week, I think 9 of the
I
this week.
scored lots and lots.
They are quite strange numbers, these ones, I'm not going to lie.
795, such a strange pattern. I don't think it's a defensive kind of pattern. Unless it's like a goalkeeper that's got like a yellow card or something. I don't know. My gut is it's a striker, so let's go with Mitrovic.
That is correct.
Yeah.
when you said that, I can't remember who got a striker who scored in every game. I was like, we were talking about Mitrovic earlier. I wonder if we'll click on to.
He scored in all 3. I know he scored against Spurs, and that was more luck. That was, not gonna lie.
Yeah, he scored against Arsenal, Brighton, and Spurs. In the first game, he got 1 bonus point. Second game, he got 3 bonus points, and then he got a yellow card in the last one.
Wow.
So you got that 5 right. That it was a goal and a yellow card.
That was more by luck than judgment, I think. Those were
You've got to give yourself more credit than that. Right, back to you, Charlie. So your player in game week 4 scored 1 point. In game week 5, they scored 10 points. And in game week 6, they scored 5 points.
Okay, 1, 10, 5.
Nice range.
Yeah, that's a bit difficult. Right, 1 would be defender conceding, maybe 2, or it could be a sub appearance. 10's a weird one. That could be a 5, 6, 7 midfielder goal, 3 bonus. Forward 5, 6. It's difficult for it to be a forward 10, I think. Okay, so I think it's a midfielder. 1, 10, 5. The problem is at this point I can't remember 2 weeks ago or 2 game weeks ago.
Quite difficult with the low scoring week the previous week.
Yeah. It's gonna have to be a gap. Let's go. Well, who scored this week? Midfielder that scored. I'm almost certain this isn't right because I would have known more about it, but I'm going to go Bailey.
No, that is not correct. Don't do that to me with Bailey. Right, in game week 4, when they scored 1 point, they were playing Brighton. Game week 5, when they got 10 points, they were playing Everton. Game week 6, when they got 5 points, they were playing Brentford.
Playing Brentford, so it was Leeds. So that's they had 2 goal scorers. One was Sinistera, and I can't remember the other one was, but I don't think it was anyone big in FPL terms. So I assume it's got to be Sinistera, unless there was anyone I'm missing. And that would make sense. The one because he came on as a sub, I think, after he got signed. Well, yeah, I've got no other options. So Sinistera.
Yep, that is correct. Yeah, so game week 4 he came on as a sub for 31 minutes and got 1 point. Game week 5 he got 10 points because he scored a goal, 2 appearance points and 3 bonus points. And then game week 6 he scored, got subbed up before the 60th minute, so he got 1 point and also got a yellow card. So it was literally just the 5 for his goal that you could see there. So yeah, it was a slightly different than that 5. But yeah, 2 points for that. So back to Sam. So your next player, Sam. This could be quite tough. Game week 4, they had 1 point. Game week 5, they had... Oh, just lost it there. Sorry. Game week 4, they had 1 point. Game week 5, they had 5 points. In game week 6, they also had 5 points.
1-5-5.
Yeah, it's quite a tough one, I'm not going to lie, this one.
That could be anyone.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I have no idea. Absolutely no idea.
Well, you've got 3 points so far on both of them, so I've got to trip you up somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah, quite pleased with this one.
1-5-5. Well, that's... I mean, it could be a defender with like... Oh, I don't even... I honestly don't even know where to guess. I don't even know where to guess.
Very random name.
All right. Who kept a clean sheet this week in the league? Did anyone keep a clean sheet?
Don't feel like it, does it?
Oh, well, Wolves kept a clean sheet, didn't they? So let's go with... I don't even know any Wolves defenders. 8 Nuri.
No, that is incorrect.
Okay.
Right, in game week 4 to get 1 point, they were playing Aston Villa. Game week 5 to get 5 points, they were playing Tottenham. And in game week 6 to get 5 points, they were playing Chelsea.
There's West Ham. Well, I mean, I know who scored the goal for West Ham. I can't think of many other players who would have scored 5 points in that game. So I guess the next guess is Antonio.
That is correct.
Big bailout.
Yeah, so I was trying to work out what he's got here with his... How did he came on as a sub? But no, he didn't come on as a sub, ignore that. He got his 4 points for a goal. He got his 2 appearance points and then -1 for a yellow card. It said 73 minutes, so I was like, questioning myself, he can't come on as a sub there. But yeah, and then against Spurs, he got 2 appearance points and an assist to get his 5. So 2 points there. So you got there anyway, considering you didn't know beforehand.
Yeah.
So back to you, Charlie, for your potentially last one. You are currently 1 point behind Sam, so a nice 3-pointer here would be handy. So your final player, potentially, is game week 4, they got 10 points. Game week 5, they got 5 points. And game week 6, they got 9 points. So 10, 5 and 9.
Okay, 10, 5, 9. Those are weird scores. I think 4, 8, 9, 10. So that could be 2. goals for a striker, could it? 10? 4, 8, 9, 10. It could be a midfield. The five always throws you off. But it's 3 returns out of 3. So I feel like this person's got to be quite relevant. I feel like this can be impossible to get first time. 1059. Let's go with. I don't even know. Let's just guess. I don't even know what would be a good guess. I'm going to say Danny Welbeck just because I want to get his name mentioned.
That's not a good guess. That is incorrect. So this player in game week 4 played against Nottingham Forest. In game week 5 they played against West Ham, and in game week 6 they played against Fulham.
Ooh, okay. So it's Spurs. Now, what was the third score? Sorry, so the most recent one.
9 against Fulham.
And so against Fulham, it was 2-1. It was Kane and Højbjerg, and there's no way Højbjerg got that return in the first 2. So I'm assuming it's Kane, unless it was anyone the assists. But I don't think the assists were both from the same player. So to get 9 would have been tough. Yeah, it's got to be Kane then, I guess. I didn't know he got 3 returns in 3 though, but I'm going Kane.
That is correct. He's actually got 4 returns in 3, because that 10-pointer was 2 goals against Forest, 1 assist against West Ham, and then 1 goal against Fulham.
Should have gone Kane over Salah.
Yeah, you're missing out on all those great points. So Sam is currently losing by 1 point, so we need him to struggle badly here, Charlie, if you've got any chance. So let's get your last player, Sam. This is a kind of a backwards one. So in game week 4, this player scored 22 points. In game week
22.
22. There's not been many plus 20 points. So
game week 5, they scored 9 points, and in game week 6, they scored 1 point. So it's a kind of back to front. You need to think of it back.
What we're doing here is relying on Sam not having a good enough memory to remember
Yeah.
what that 22 was.
I only know of a couple of players that have scored over 20 points, and that was the week that Liverpool beat Bournemouth 9-0. So, considering one of, if not my favourite Liverpool player of all time was one of them, I'm going to just fling the shot at Firmino.
Yeah, that is correct.
That's 22.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, for the winning, the decisive player, you've gone for a Liverpool player who's scored an outstanding number of points in a 1 week, so it's memorable.
But I gave you Saka, the second player, so I had
I'll
to...
leave up there. I tell you, that's a slam dunk.
We were just hoping Sam's memory would fail in there, but 22 points maybe is a bit too far with his 2 goals and 3 assists that he got in that game. Crazy, yeah. So that's a win for Sam, easily.
I want to call an investigation, like the Premier League are investigating into the PGMOL or whoever it is.
But I'm just saying, I put an Arsenal player and a Liverpool player in there. You didn't get your Arsenal player on the first guess, but Sam
it's meant to ramp up in difficulty. Saka's much more difficult to guess than 22 points from Firmino.
I honestly didn't even hear what you said for the other 3 weeks.
I had to mix it up. Couldn't make it easy and
Outrageous.
well, easy and then hard. I wasn't expecting to get Mitrovic on 3 either, to be fair. But yeah, so except for Antonio, Sam got all of them on the first go. So that's kind of... You probably would have lost anyways, Charlie, so don't give me that.
Makes me feel so much better.
You're welcome. So that does level up at 2-2, I'm pretty sure, for this season. We didn't count Pete's petty point that we got in when he was on. So it's 2-2. Sam's level it up. Pure and simple now. So we shall move on from that. We'll cover up all the VAR controversy like the FA will, and we'll move on to the next week. So I think we'll start with an FPL feel. So you've kind of hinted, Charlie, in terms of your ideas in terms of wildcarding, so you may as well add that into the discussion. What are your plans for game week 7 in terms of transfers? And you mentioned the wildcard, so you can talk about that as you go along, what your plans are with that currently.
Yeah, so kind of trying to decide when to play the wildcard. I was looking at the fixtures. I know there are some people that are trying, maybe it's being a bit reactionary based on a bad week, but are looking at playing it already. For me, it just doesn't quite work in terms of fixtures, because I was looking at what kind of team I put together if I did try and wildcard either this week or game week 8, which I think particularly would be a bad decision going into an international break after it, where you could just get knocks and whatever. But it just felt like a lot of the teams that I'd want for 7 and 8 are players that I'd want to get rid of in the following game week. So it feels like you can just set yourself up better long term with a game week 9 wildcard or later. So that's kind of that was already loosely the plan anyway, but I think that's now that I've kind of just looked into that a bit more in terms of fixtures, it's kind of firmed up in my mind that I'm not almost certainly, but I'm much more likely now to be going game week 9 wildcard, and I've definitely ruled out 7 or 8 as wildcard options. So with that in mind, that's kind of focused me down just on the next 2 game weeks, which in a way is quite nice because like I say, it kind of just allows you to pick players specifically for these 2 weeks, and there's a couple of sort of more interesting picks around that price. We mentioned Gross before. I think Brighton probably have one of the best 2 fixtures with Bournemouth and Crystal Palace. Now, obviously, Palace is a derby game, but it's also at Brighton, which helps. There's a couple of teams which have a nice 2, but I probably wouldn't go near. So, for example, Nottingham Forest away at Leeds, home to Fulham. It's okay, but I don't really want to invest in any of their attacking assets or defensive. I've already got Williams, but he's just going to be on the bench probably for me both weeks. And then maybe the likes, like I mentioned before, about the kind of possible move to a striker, particularly for game week 8. It'll be, like I said, it'll be either probably Isak playing at home to Bournemouth, or it will be Mitrovic away to Nottingham Forest. So then that kind of leads me to this week. I've got 2 free transfers. I'm not ruling out a double up on Brighton attack. That sounds a bit crazy, and maybe a bit, again, reactionary off the back of them scoring 5, which won't happen every week. They don't. And I see we've got our resident Leicester fan Hills in the chat. They won't play against Leicester every week, so they won't be able to score as many as that. But away to Bournemouth is probably as close as you can get to that. So yeah, I'm not ruling out maybe because Kulusevski's probably going to go for me. I don't really need that much money in someone that's not returning as much for me now. So I may look to downgrade to possibly like a Trossard or a McAllister, which would then give me some funds to move around to do that striker upgrade. And I may look to shift on one of Perisic or Walker, because Walker's been flagged and might be injured. So I'll see what the kind of news is in the press conferences before the weekend, because whilst they play Spurs this week, they then play Wolves away as well, which probably should be a clean sheet for Man City in game week 8. So ideally I want to keep Walker if possible, but if he's injured then it'll be him. Probably looking to kind of reverse my error of transfers last time and bring Trippier back, because I feel like he's going to be one of the better value outside of the top 6. Newcastle in general just seems to be doing quite well. So yeah, that's probably loosely my moves, dependent on what kind of news we get after the European games, of course.
Yeah, like you said, pretty can attack those weeks. That'll be interesting. Yeah, I don't think Walker travelled, did he, at all? And he's definitely not playing tonight. I haven't checked the bench, but I think it's Cancelo and the new left back that they signed who are playing. So yeah, one to watch out for in a few teams. I think got in Walker as well. Going to you, Sam, have you got any plans for your transfers this week? Have you thought about potentially wildcarding anywhere in the near future, or is that not something you've considered yet?
Yeah, I'll be wildcarding in game week 9 as well. I think I had originally thought I might do it in 8, but I think the fixture transition into 9 is better to lend itself to a wildcard. I think there's an international break as well, so it's always good to evaluate post international break what your status is. I think this week I've got 2 free transfers as well. I'm going to be taking out Kulusevski. That punt didn't really work out. And I think I'm going to go McAllister just because I think a lot more people have Gross already. And McAllister might be a little bit of a differential on that front. Although quite a few people have wildcarded. If I did bring in McAllister this week, that would give me 3.6 in the bank as well. And then I might take like a pretty big, well, maybe it's not even that big a punty move next week, and take Salah out for Chelsea and look at maybe De Bruyne and Mitrovic coming in as a double sub for Salah and Greenwood. I can't believe I'm even thinking about taking Salah out, but it's just a lot of other better, in my opinion, better assets out there at the moment. I think in terms of wild cards, players I'll probably be looking to target. Want to get Pope in. I think he's just generally going to probably make more saves over the course of the season than Edison from what we've seen so far from City. And the hamper of having Edison in net means you cap yourself at 2 Man City options out on pitch. So I'm probably not too thrilled about that if they end up going on an absolute rant. Which they will do at some point this season, no doubt. Like Charlie said, Trippier, a good one to target. I think he's going to do well outside the top 6. I'm pleased with Alexander-Arnold and Cancelo. Williams seems to be the best value budget defender available. Not too fussed about having Dunk at the moment. I think he's okay. Whether or not I keep him or not long term, I'm not sure. Reece James started really well, a little bit underwhelming, so he might move on. Not really too sure. Other than that, you just got to have Haaland really. And then I'm just pleased so far with generally the balance of the rest of the team. But I think that 3 striker setup, at least 2 really good strikers will be the way that we're going with the wild card. And the low value midfielders coming good at the moment. But as we say every year, we're only 6 game weeks in, and the same model does tend to shift as the season goes on. So we might be here post international break after Haaland's got injured or Jesus has picked up a knock or something that we're forced into another move. But for me this week will just be probably McAllister for Kulusevski with a view to then next week almost certainly bringing in that 3rd striker and potentially it being Salah and Greenwood that come out for De Bruyne and either Tony or Mitrovic. Probably Mitrovic. I like what Charlie was saying earlier about the talisman thing. I think that's important.
Yeah, you just mentioned Haaland again. He's got his 2nd in the Champions League, so playing every single minute at the minute, and it's still in the 67th minute. He's still playing, so no early subs for him. It's crazy. I saw it flash up when Sam mentioned Haaland. I'm like, yeah, that's going to be him again. It's Mr. Inevitable, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, interesting. You're both kind of going for similar strategies. I feel like I do this every season where I try to be different, but I'm trying not trying to do it for different sake, because I'm not planning to wildcard in 8 or 9. I'm going deeper than that, probably 12, and then go full out for the last 5 fixtures before the international break and target those run of fixtures. The key reason being, you both talked about getting in a 3rd striker. I already have the 3rd striker, so I'm looking at my team and I'm like, what if I compare it to say an ideal wildcard in game week 9? I'd say there's probably 4 or 5 changes maybe that ideally I would make. Why don't I just make them between now and then?
Yeah, I mean, if you already have the 3rd striker set up and ready to go, and you're trying to make up a couple of places, you can afford to be really aggressive on your transfers and just like really target 1 game week at a time and just punt on 1 asset at a time, which I think is something that going forward for the rest of the season I'm going to try and do a bit more rather than just sort of letting it tick.
Yeah, I think a key bit about doing that punting as well is when I look at my team, every player can play. So like my bench at the minute lined up for next week is Bailey, Nico Williams and Pereira. So it's like they can all play. So even if someone gets an injury, I'm not that concerned. I can just sit on the bench for a few weeks. I think I just, like you said, I need to be aggressive with my transfers. I don't want to be doing Neto to Gibbs White as my transfer. That's just not the kind of game I want to play. So
I think you should bring Aubameyang, Will.
No, thanks. There's a lot better striking options and cheaper ones, so I'm not going anywhere near that. Yeah, you never know. It's a 1 week punt before the wildcard, maybe, but definitely not in the long term thinking. So yeah, I've got that because I brought in Tony a few weeks ago. I've got that set up. So I think going forward, I'm not currently planning to wildcard. If we get to like the international break and we get a few injuries and it changes my whole plan, then I might change it. But at the minute, I'm not considering to wildcard because I think majority of the players, I need to deal with the Liverpool assets is my main issue. But I've only got one transfer, so my current plan for transfers this week is to roll the transfer and then have two for next week, where Robertson is probably definitely on the chopping block, and I'm not ruling out Salah as well. I'm going aggressive next week because I've got a short list of Robertson, Jesus, and Salah, and 2 out of those 3 are going next week, no matter what. So we'll see what happens, if that backfires or not. But the fact that Liverpool have got a harder run makes me more tempted to do it as well.
I think the other thing as well that's kind of making me want to wildcard in 9 as well is, like it's been alluded to by both of you, I'm considering selling Salah as well. And it's the most seriously I've thought about it for however many years that he's been in our squads and doing like kind of untouchable in our squads. People have talked about it, but then regretted it after he's banged in goals afterwards. And there's still obviously the possibility he's not like he's dropped off as a player necessarily, just maybe form. But the point of these, particularly the really expensive players, is that they should be captain options. And at the moment with Haaland the way he is, it's difficult to go against Haaland captain, at which point Salah starts to become a bit too expensive for what he is in our teams at the moment. And so that kind of makes me think using a wildcard is a decent way, if I am going to get rid of Salah, to be able to distribute those funds properly. And actually just improve the whole team rather than maybe just doing 2 moves, Salah down to someone and then using that money going someone else up. It kind of allows me to spread it over the team and make the whole team better rather than just 2 positions, which, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Because I think, more and more people are opening up to the idea of no Salah, and using that 9 wildcard may be able to get ahead of the people that aren't wildcarding in terms of getting rid of Salah.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about spreading the funds, because the main reason I probably wouldn't take Salah out is because I don't think there's another premium that I would want. So spreading the funds does make sense with a wildcard, because I'm looking at like Spurs. I'm not overly. I think if I was getting one of them, I'd want Kane, but then I don't really want to use a striker spot on Kane. And I'm not convinced by Son playing every minute. And then you've got KDB. Do you really want both of those from City? And then I feel like there's not, unless you're going for like a Sterling or a Bruno, there's not really places to spend your money in that premium bracket. So I get you thinking with spreading the funds. It's definitely going to be an interesting few weeks. It's definitely going to move away from the template and a lot of different ideas going around. So
we'll see how this all changes when Salah scores a hat-trick against Wolves.
Yeah.
Everyone changes their plan.
I feel that's a good link there, Charlie. So we'll move on to captaincy. We can stay with you, Charlie. What are your plans for captaincy for the next week currently?
Well, I really want to put it on Jesus because I'm going to the game. But I feel like, and it's maybe going a bit unnoticed, that Everton's defence has started to improve. I'm a bit tentative saying that because of the way they've been, and just how generally watching them, they haven't looked very good, to be honest. But it seems like the change in I think they changed formation more to the back 4, but particularly with Onana and stuff in midfield and kind of screening them a bit better. They seem to be improving defensively, and I'm a little bit worried, particularly the fact that Everton will be away, that they'll just try and sit in, which will make it a bit more difficult for us.
I'm just going to say before you finish, just to add to your captaincy bit, Haaland has gone off in the 70th minute, if that skews your discussions any further.
Exactly what I was coming on to. But yeah, obviously we mentioned before, he is a bit just inevitable, complete freak, and I have no doubt he will score against Spurs. So it's quickly looking like he's becoming the kind of highest floor and highest ceiling simultaneously in terms of players going into any game week. And there's not really anyone in the league that I wouldn't mind captaining him against. I don't think there's anyone really that's shown a good enough defence at all. You mentioned City have conceded certain big chances, even though they're keeping high possession, which is what usually gets them clean sheets. It's not necessarily out of good defensive play. And outside of them, no one else has really putting in really good defensive performances consistently. So yeah, I think it may get a bit boring, but I feel like Haaland's becoming my permanent captain now, unless anything particularly changes or there's a risk of minutes. But like you said, if he's come off, midweek, he's got plenty of time until the late kickoff on Saturday. And also it's obviously against, Spurs. It's going to be a big game, I think, particularly because I think from memory Spurs beat them twice last year, which I'm sure will play on Guardiola's mind, and he'll want to be going all guns out for this. So yeah, I think it's going to be on Haaland, unless there's anything that persuades me otherwise, but I don't see it myself. I think it has to be Haaland.
How about you, Sam, from your point of view?
Haaland.
It would like a one-word answer.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much else to add, is it? Guy's a machine. He's going to score every week. It's just the only reason he's not going to score is if he doesn't play, and he still might score. So
score from an injury bench or something.
Yeah.
I think I was considering Salah, but then I've just looked the fact that obviously Man City have played on the Tuesday night and not play until the Saturday tea time, should I say. And then Liverpool are playing tomorrow night, playing earlier than City, and Liverpool are also away at Napoli, which I think will be a pretty difficult game. So I think it's probably set up for Haaland. I've resisted it so long, it might be the time to bite the bullet and go for Haaland. I think you made a good point on Jesus as well. Charlie Everton haven't looked too bad at the back, so it's one of those ones that looks appealing, but I'm not sure how appealing it is. Like, I can still see you winning quite comfortably, but I think like a 2 or 3 goals in there, not like a 5 or 6-0 kind of scoreline.
Yeah, I think if this were the first couple of weeks, then I'd be much more tempted to do it, because of the way Everton looked at the time. But yeah, it just does feel like they're more focusing on trying to improve that defence than anything else, which will make it quite tough for us to break them down. But yeah, I do still expect an Arsenal win, like you said, but I don't expect it to be too high scoring.
Yeah. Just going back to you, Sam, so we've kind of mentioned a lot about wildcards and taking punts on players. Looking on the fixtures going into the next week, I know you've mentioned, I think you were going for like a Brighton player. Is there any other like fixtures that stand out to you that you'd be throwing in some assets from certain teams just to optimise your points in the short term? I know a lot of us got rid of Reece James previously on his injury. Would we want to bring him back, say him, because of playing Fulham? Any ideas you've got?
I don't think Reece James is going to have a great week, by the way. I could definitely see a situation where he'll get a win against Chelsea, so I don't really know what's going to happen there. I wouldn't necessarily look at anyone from Leicester, Villa. I don't really know what's going to happen. Liverpool, Wolves, to be honest, but Jota's potentially back, so that could be a really interesting spanner in the works if that does come into fruition this week. And if Jota comes back and scores, all of a sudden, you might see a bit of a shift towards him. There's just a lot of decent games about this week. There's a lot of tight games. You could potentially look at maybe the Monday Night Football and a Leeds attacking asset. I don't know. I think Bamford's back for Leeds. It might be a really, really big punt, but like Nottingham Forest are going to concede. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I don't think there's anyone that's sort of really standing out as no one's got him and he could really shine.
In terms of that Leeds fixture, I'm currently between if I should play Gibbs White away at Leeds or Bailey away at Leicester, because I feel like there'll be goals in both of those games.
I would play Bailey away at Leicester of those two.
But the issue is Bailey always burns me when I play him. That's the reputation he's got in my team now. And so at least I know Gibbs White's going to play, but I don't. I've got Nico Williams on the bench as well because I just don't trust the clean sheet, especially against Leeds. And, well, I got burnt by Trippier last week as well, benching him. I had Bailey and Trippier both on the bench with a nice 8 points in a very low-scoring week, so that could have made the difference. Hills has put, but it's Leicester in the chat, so that's good reasoning.
Patrick off the bench.
Patrick off the bench. Yeah, it's one of those funny ones. Because he was playing pretty advanced against City as well, so I quite like the idea, but I don't trust Gerrard enough to... I wish it was in some way like the early game on the Saturday, so I had an indication if he was going to start or not, but Yeah, that's one of the ones that I'll probably regret benching someone when it gets to it. That's the only issue when you've got 15 playing players. You have this kind of benching headache most weeks, but
Bailey will 100% start.
can I get that in writing?
if Bailey doesn't start, I'll be astounded.
Yeah, you'd hope he'd start and get me some value back after he lost me in FPL. So the same question to you as well, Charlie. Is there anything that stands out with players that we've not mentioned that you're just targeting a short-term basis to make the most of this game week or the next few?
I think we covered them really. Maybe a Newcastle asset away to West Ham. I was also looking at Leeds game, Sinisterra potentially. I think they're trying to make him what Rafinha was in terms of coming in off that right. Maybe that's a lot to live up to in terms of how much Rafinha did for Leeds with his goals. But he is someone that I've been looking at as a potential kind of differential pick. But yeah, I think you covered it really. Like we said before, Brighton asset maybe away to Bournemouth. I'm the same as Sam. I've almost considered doing the Mitro move a little bit earlier because I fancy him to score against Chelsea. Chelsea haven't looked very good at the back, despite on paper probably having one of the best kind of back defensive lines by name in terms of just reputation and stuff. But it's good, they're all kind of new to it and new together, so it's going to take a while for them to click. So yeah, I definitely see Fulham scoring, if not doing really well in that game. So. Maybe even going for that Mitro move a little bit earlier, possibly.
Yeah, you're back him to score against anyone in a minute, wouldn't you, Mitro, to be fair? It's just a man. If only in the score would be him, like we said earlier. But yeah, I think that kind of rounds up everything we wanted to touch on. Is anything we missed from either of you?
No, good.
Good stuff, and we should actually be back next week since there's not midweek games. Now it's back on the Champions League swing of stuff. We're back to normal game weeks, and then it also got the international break coming up, haven't we, like we said, so we might even have to do one that week because if you guys are both on a Wildcard, we might have to do a bit of a Wildcard swatting up stream or podcast, should I say. But yeah, I think that is us for now, everyone. I appreciate Charlie and Sam as always and everyone for listening. We will see you again next week and have a great rest of your evening.